Drinking water is essential for good health. However, you got to make sure that you're not making this big mistake. Hey Wellness Warrior, I'm Dr. Zyrowski, and the topic of drinking water seems quite simple. However, most of us screw it up at some point in our lives, and I know that I certainly have. And so I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did. So let's dive right in and let's talk about one of the first big mistakes, and that is drinking filtered water. Now you might be thinking to yourself, isn't it good to drink good, clean, pure water? And the answer is of course yes. However, there's one problem with it. And the problem is that when you drink filtered water, you're pulling out not only all the toxins, but you're also pulling out all the minerals. And these minerals are very important for proper hydration. Almost every time I ask a patient who's having headaches and fatigue issues, they're having muscle cramps, I say, are you staying well hydrated? They say, of course, I'm drinking tons of water, because they think that's going to be the solution to stopping all those different symptoms I just mentioned. I say, no. Are you staying well hydrated? Are you getting proper electrolytes like sodium and chloride and potassium and magnesium? Are you getting these different electrolytes? And the answer, of course, is no. So we want to make sure that as we drink good, clean, filtered, pure water, we're adding electrolytes back in. You could take a pinch of sea salt and put it in your water. Personally, I like to use an electrolyte powder, and it's only because heck, after I've went years and years of just mostly drinking water, it's nice to have a little flavor and a little change up, and that's very important for you to follow a good healthy lifestyle and keep it sustainable. You have to be able to enjoy it. So personally, I like an electrolyte powder. Now, the other thing that's important when it comes to making sure that you're drinking water right is not drinking too much water, because that's another thing that'll flush electrolytes out of your system. Make sure that you're not over consuming water as well. The million-dollar question is, well, how much water do I drink? What you should do is consume about 40 to 60% of your body weight in ounces, and that's going to be a good general rule of thumb. The thing is that everybody's a little bit different, so these little arbitrary rules of 8-ounce glasses of water or drink a gallon a day, I mean, that's so dependent on one individual versus another. At the end of the day, if you're exercising, if you're in a sauna, if you're sedentary, these things all change that number dramatically. So we want to make sure that we're doing what's right for us. Now, the next thing you have to watch out for is you don't want to be drinking tap water. The reason for this is simply because tap water has a lot of different chemicals in it. If you live in a city, then typically you're going to have a lot of chlorine. I remember when I lived in the city, I would fill the bathtub up for my kids and it would smell like a pool, right? It had so much chlorine in it. Well, they also typically add fluoride, which is a neurotoxin. And then beyond that, you're going to find things like different estrogens in the water. You're going to find pharmaceuticals in the water. You're going to find microplastics in the water. It's unbelievable. And just because you're not in the city on city water doesn't mean that your water is pure. In the region where I live, the arsenic level's off the charts. The arsenic level in my area is 1,600 times more than the acceptable limit. So I don't want to be drinking all that arsenic. What you can do if you want to figure out how much toxins is in your water, you can actually go to the environmental working group. I'll put a link in the description below. You can put in your zip code, it'll tell you what has been found in your area, so you have an idea. I've already had my water tested in my house, so when I actually did the testing, I found that information out. But then if you go to the environmental working group website, they confirm those findings that I already knew. So you want to make sure always to filter your water well and not drink tap water. The next thing you want to make sure that you're doing is not over consuming caffeine, because caffeine is going to dump electrolytes out of your system. It's estimated that for every cup of coffee that you have, your body will dump around 600 milligrams of sodium. And once you start dumping that sodium, on top of not getting the proper amounts of sodium and electrolytes in to begin with, as a result of that, you're not going to feel well. So caffeine, if you're drinking 1, 2, 3 cups a day, or you're drinking energy drinks of 300 milligrams of caffeine, they're going to really mess up your electrolytes. Without proper hydration already, and then throwing all that caffeine in, you could feel really awful from it. Some people who drink caffeine can notice this. It's like, oh my gosh, I drink caffeine, it just crushes me. It's almost like alcohol, for instance. Now, another thing that we want to make sure that we're not doing when drinking water is drinking a ton of water with our meals. When we eat our food, we should drink enough water to kind of just wash it down, but we shouldn't be drinking a ton of water, because what it's going to do is actually dilute our stomach acid, and we're not going to be able to digest our food well. Especially when you're eating solids like meats, for instance, you're going to really notice that it causes a lot of digestive distress if you're drinking a ton of water. In general, water should be consumed prior to a meal, after a meal, but it shouldn't really be consumed during a meal. And some people, you kind of dehydrate yourself because you're working and stuff, and then you sit down for a meal, and not only do you eat, but you kind of try to rehydrate yourself and drink a ton of water at that time. It's not ideal for digestion. So these are the top tips you can start integrating into your life today to make sure that you're getting well hydrated. I'm Dr. Zyrowski, and if you enjoyed this video, you'll like this one over here next.